Welcome, my loves, to Mel's Musing, episode 2 with Melissa Melrose. It was interesting. I was reflecting over this year, and as I know a lot of you have been, this year has been a wild one. But I was reflecting back at the start of the year of what I really decided in my being that I was devoting this year to myself. Sounds like a very weird thing to say, but I stopped chasing life and started chasing myself. And not chasing in the sense of like diving deep. That is part of my being, is to question, to dive deep, to understand where things come from, to explain why life is happening the way it is. So I've always gone within from a very young age and had a deep understanding of the spiritual psychology of life, how trauma has created the way that we protect ourselves, how we show up in the world. And one thing that I know through being an empath and through feeling everything around me is I felt responsible and obligated from a very young age to bring truth, to fix how people felt. And fix is the word in the sense that I felt responsible because I felt like I was probably on some level broken as a little girl because no one else experienced life the way I did. And even as I grew, and I had a deep knowing that I wasn't broken, but I was different. But in the difference, I tried so deeply to be accepted, to be loved, to be enough. And I spent my life creating ways to adapt, to morph into what people needed me to be. And I was never a people pleaser because I'm too feisty for that. But I would self-abandon to make people feel loved. And in that self-abandonment, I chose other people instead of myself. I would put myself through experiences, even though my current reality was probably worse than theirs. I felt obligated to be there for them. I never wanted anyone to feel alone because that's how I felt. It felt like it was my obligation to help people understand the depth of themselves, the shadow parts of themselves, so that they could feel not alone. Because I've been working so deeply in the shadows of not only myself my whole entire life, but witness it so clearly in others. So this year, I recognized in the chase of life and the chase in the sense of love, there was still aspects of me that were looking outside of myself to be validated, to be approved of, to be loved. And what I realized through my life is through everything that I've given, the only person that's ended up in the same place in life, not emotionally, but physically in my sense of financial self, in the way I wanted to set my business up because of the choices that I'd made. Some of the choices I will never regret, because choosing to be a single mother with my children and devoting presence to them, I am reaping the benefits now. Like my boys, they're still teenagers, but the relationship that we have through the inner growth that I went through before them, during them as little kids, we have such a different relationship now together, and I can step back each time and allow them to expand into who they need to be without me feeling that I need to control, manipulate, or change what is happening for them. And that's been such a gift. And every time there's been a reflection of something from them, I've gone within first. And it sounds weird, but it felt like I had no choice. It felt like this was my obligation to them, was to be the best version of myself. And so getting to this place, one thing that repeated in my life was my business has been successful, but in so many parts of it, choosing to be a full-time mother as well as having a full-time business, I haven't been able to expand to where I've wanted to. And when I have, I've brought the wrong people into my business and it ended up 20 steps back. So this year, not only financially, but also in love and relationship, the last 2 years, have stepped back and I've stopped chasing. And it's very uncomfortable for someone like me not to be there for people. Not knowing what they're experiencing, what they're going through, choosing myself first, and knowing where and what energy I and they have access for and what I have access to them. Them having access to me. So it's really important to recognize for me that I don't have to be there for everyone. The only person that I'm committed to and devoted to is me. And that's even in a relationship. Because I spent a long time trying to get people to understand the depth of who I was and to understand me. And now I just understand me. I've committed and devoted to this path. And yeah, it has made my relationships and my friendships feel a little more uncomfortable because there has been a massive withdrawal in times where I've had to go deeply within and just put one foot in forward because it's been so uncomfortable. The edges that I am stepping into within myself, because no one in my lineage, no one in my family has really stepped past this line of individualization and self-sovereignty in the way that I have chosen. I've lost family, I've lost friends, I've lost a lot of things, to be honest. I felt like there has been so much loss in my life, and to get to a place that I stopped blaming myself and started recognizing that it just is. And part of my evolution and the understanding of myself that there is a letting go of people in life that are not on the same path. And that's not because I'm better and they're less. It's just where I am currently resonating in this moment is different to where they are. And that doesn't mean life can change in a moment and growth can happen and things can shift. But in the moment of making those decisions not to hold on, just because I can feel there's energy that could be repaired, but they're never going to see it from my perspective or understanding, that there's just grace, there's just love, there's just acceptance for what is. I started to get really good at letting go, because as a younger woman and a little girl, I held on so tightly. I would not let go. I would prove, I would love, I would overgive. I've stayed in abusive relationships. I've gone through hell and back in self-abandonment to be loved, to be seen, to be approved of. And I know that came from having an emotionally disconnected mum and a dad that wasn't really around. And they're beautiful people, but they are also, I suppose from their childhood, it's collateral damage, isn't it? And then it just gets passed down the line. So for me, there's no blame, but for me, it got to a point of taking radical self-responsibility beyond my wounding, beyond my trauma, but to receive the life that I know that I deserve. And it's felt like death after death after death inside myself, and to have to feel the pain of everybody before me that hasn't transmuted that, isn't meaning cleared that in their lifetime. It feels like I've had to do it. I've had the weight of that to break that cycle for myself and my children and anyone after me. It's felt like it's been my job, and it has been. And so this year I finally committed, and as uncomfortably as that's evolved, I've received more support in the most random places. Not how I would like it to be, as in financial support, but freedom. But I have in so many ways. Friends, strangers, even my old house owner that I got kicked out of. He stepped up and supported me in my business. So many random synchronicities of people, friends, family that I thought would never support me have. And that's because I'm choosing myself first. But then on the flip side, it's made people feel uncomfortable that I'm not showing up the way I always have. And I listen, I just get told that people lose access to me in certain ways, and then they gain it in other ways. My love doesn't change for them. It's just an acceptance of where the relationship is. It doesn't change for me that if they truly needed me, I'd be there in a heartbeat. But on a day-to-day relational situation, I've had to choose myself, because in the end, I'm the only one that's committed to me. And what I realized through every relationship, through every friendship, through all my family relationships, everyone's really out for themselves. Everyone's in their own inner turmoil, working through their own life path, having their own understanding and experiences of their circumstances. And they don't really have an understanding of where you're at. They can relate, they can have compassion. Some people can have deep empathy. But in the end, no one's coming to save me. And as much as I've prayed many a times for someone to, it's been me that's had to show up to hold the next version of myself. And I've stopped chasing, and I've stopped proving, and I have had my head down and bum up in the physical sense of working, and also the emotional sense of the edges that it's creating, and also being really vulnerable in places that I have probably been super hyper independent, that I haven't let people in. And some people have used it against me in moments of time. And some people have actually risen to the occasion and go, I will back you even more than you back yourself. And I really haven't had that blind faith of anyone seeing what I see in other people and holding that space. It's only very few people that have done that for me in my life. And I think knowing that I can hold myself through anything is one of the greatest achievements of my life. Not to be super independent, not to be hyper vigilant, but to be sovereign in self, that I trust myself and I back what I feel deeply, and I won't waver for that. The devotion comes to me. And even if somebody doesn't understand me, that is okay. I will always work towards love and resolution, but not if it means self-abandonment for me. And that's been a big commitment to self as an empath. Commitment to stop chasing this external idea of validation. Stop working in a way that doesn't serve my body. And that's been definitely a gift of this shift. I mean, I've been through many shifts in my body, from glandular fever to chronic fatigue to breast implant illness. I've spent a lot of my life having to listen to my body because I didn't want to. Because, you know, over the years, the depth that I've had to go to clear what laid within my body, not in, for me, just in this lifetime, but many lifetimes. And it's been a great showing of the macro understanding of this realm and this energy, to come right down to the micro, like, of my humanness and me in this life and what my path is. And I've been called. I feel like I've been pulled, even in the darkness, on this path. And the more clear that I've got within myself and unattached myself from beliefs, programming, my wounding, the expectations that I put on myself that I believed everybody else expected of me, that was my bullshit. That was mine to unravel. And that's been a very uncomfortable one, to be really honest with myself at where I was still playing small, where I wasn't committing to my soul's path. And even though I was getting dragged along, there's still free will to distract yourself, to minimize yourself, to still look outside yourself for what you believe is what's going to fix you or make you feel better in the moment. But long term, I always felt let down. And what I realized when I went off in free will, off my path, or got distracted, or played around a little bit of trauma or things that weren't really serving me, I got pulled up deeply for that. And so this year, especially to my business and to how I serve, because that is a huge part of who I am, I wanted to choose differently. I wanted to choose to be able to show up on a wider scale, on a bigger scale, to be seen more. I've got multiple layers of wisdom and also experience in my life, not just in the depth of my trauma and the experience that this life has given me, but also in what I've done. Like, I've done an exceptional amount of things in my life that when I actually sit back, and because it's not documented on Facebook, it's not real, but it's like I've been surviving this life from a very young age by myself. So you just got shit done. And I'm a manifesting generator. I get shit done. I get more shit done sometimes in a day and have the capacity to keep going against my body sometimes than a lot of people do. But I've recognized that some of that comes from wounding and this identification, over-identification with the masculine part of myself is in what I felt society, probably even my father, expected of me, how I wanted to achieve in a certain way. And that was a real repression of my femininity. So it's taken a lot to embrace the softness within myself and not for anyone else, because I was very soft in many moments, but I can be very direct in others in my truth when it comes through. So it can be one extreme or the other, but softness to myself, because I've really, and I'm pretty sure if you really reflect yourself, we are our worst critics. We are the ones that hold ourselves back. We are the one that has created these expectations, these protections, these disconnections, that until we're really ready to be honest, and until we're really ready to do the work, and the work starts with your humanness. It doesn't start with your inner child. It doesn't start with the energy. And, you know, I had all of it going on. And I know from a young age, I was seeking and I was searching and I was doing the work. It's been part of my life since I was really young. My stepmom came into my life when I was 10. It's normal for me. And the experiences of having as a really little girl, it's always been part of who I am. But how to master that in your humanness, it comes with building that foundation. And I think that's why I've devoted myself. I could go way woo-woo and deep and multidimensional, and I do in some aspects, but if we don't understand our humanness, if we don't understand why we created the protection, we're never going to be able to change. And one thing that I've really lent on, and especially because I've kind of, as I'm writing my teacher training, I realized how much that my learnings were ingrained, and I have sort of transformed them through my own lived experience, how they align. And the pillars of what I'm teaching through my own lived experience still have the lineage of the breath work and the spiritual psychology of rebirthing. And it's just so interesting just to watch that as I'm writing the manual and sharing it with the students, just how that has evolved. And a lot of it I didn't realize had imprinted so deeply. But one thing I know, when I was 21 and rolling myself up in mattresses, recreating the birth trauma and going back to the depths of what lay within the cells of my body, this lifetime, past lifetimes, trauma, I didn't know how to hold it. I didn't know how to stay with myself. So as I was bringing all of this stuff up and witnessing myself in my deepest pain, part of me was just re-traumatizing myself because I wasn't closing any loops. I didn't feel safe. I still felt I didn't understand myself, so I was still searching. And even though I was feeling deeply within myself, it didn't finish. It felt like I wasn't whole. And it was only until I really recognized how deeply not only did the breath work with my body, but the nervous system, when I could understand my nervous system and my mind and how they both work together to protect me, I realized I was shutting myself down. I was re-traumatizing myself and then using the same techniques that I had coped as a little girl to protect myself from myself. So as much as I may have expanded, as much as I may have more knowledge, it wasn't embodied. And it was only really probably until my 30s that I started to get into the body. I started to work again with the breath, especially through my yoga teacher training and stuff. That I was like, oh, there's such a still big disconnection in myself, in my body, and in how I process my emotions. And my gifts came online more and more as I started to connect to my body and the wisdom and the power and the calm and softness, the nurture that I created with myself in this devotion. And not only through my teachings and my learnings, but my sickness. My health has been one of my greatest teachings. As much as it felt like a disadvantage in the moment, what I learnt about myself is in self-compassion, rest, care. I should have been taught this about my body when I was a little girl. I should have been able to attune to my body and its wisdom in all its cyclical nature. And to be honest, now as I'm moving through perimenopause, I've only just got a deep understanding of that cyclical nature of a woman. I learned a little bit about it in pregnancy because I went very natural in my pregnancy and I was very clear on how I was going to birth and all of the things that I did. It was definitely not without flaws, because I still realized even then from my first to second birth how much I'd grown as a woman through birth and what that initiated me in how to surrender into my body. And the shame. There's been so much shame as a woman in my body, that also too not knowing how to release that from the body and the nervous system, because these loops of belief and dysregulation that caused in my body, I could never access it to clear it fully. And I've sat and I've been diligent and I've devoted myself to clearing out my physical form and being really present with myself as things are moving through. Every reaction, everything that I witness within myself, I go in, and I'm ruthless with myself. But what I have learned as my feminine self, especially through this transition, that not only I can't take my little girl wounds, which I feel like I have such deep compassion for and understanding, and I've reclaimed her, I also recognize that through the programming that's still laid within my body about being a woman, how I was supposed to look to be loved, there was just these final things. And then as I'm stepping beyond any woman in my lineage, feeling the impact of having to witness what my mother, my grandmother, and everyone before them went through, and have an understanding about it, but also knowing how that affected me. So having compassion for their path and knowing where they were limited at, but also recognizing their unconsciousness not to want to move forward, and probably not having the ability to with that time and era, but also the work I've had to do to clear that. And then as I clear that, especially in this last week, as I'm stepping into these different financial spaces and these different wounds within my womanhood, in this understanding of this sacred change in my body, how part of me wants to reject it, but then the other part of me wants to embrace it. So there's this duality of experience of what society has conformed women to be and what the knowingness of the wisdom of where I want to surrender to. So, I feel like as a woman, and even as men, we've all been suppressed in our femininity, our emotionality from the patriarchy. And as we're unraveling all of these layers of programming collectively, it's an individual game to create a collective shift in energy. And I take that very seriously in how I consciously walk my path. So in the choosing of me, it's amazing how much the stillness and the quiet and the self-reflection and acceptance and being alone most of the time, and to be honest, celibate for the last 2 years has been very liberating. So it's allowed me to not close my energy off, but for a woman, and especially an empath and someone like me that would get so hooked in and bond so easily through intimacy, it's been beautiful to step back into the fullness of my own body and to be separate, in the sense of I know myself clearly now and it doesn't hook me in the same way. And that's beautiful. But I also know and if I do have another relationship, that there's safety in myself to really have a union that I'm ready for. So it's a very interesting experience that I'm going through. But coming back to that, the grief that I've had to feel when I was sitting with myself, actually I was doing my makeup the other day and I was, what is this grief? And this fear that was coming through my body. And it felt like I could see and feel the tears of every woman before me of what they had experienced and have repressed. It was like I was having to feel it through my body. It was like it was in the cells of my body, this repression of the feminine, this deep disconnection, that as I'm honoring it within myself and in the way I'm showing up for myself every day and chasing myself and not tending to everybody's needs before me, and then if I am picking that up and recognizing myself in it and bringing myself back into my own self-alignment in the moment, it's changing everything. And it's been fucking uncomfortable, but so liberating. And I can't imagine walking another path than this. And as much as that it's confronting and people may not understand you, and I know people look at me and go, fucking, how do you have time for that? It's just the way I am and what I've committed to in everyday life. It's not an obligation to me. My health is not a hassle. The way I attune to my body is not a hassle. It's not a time-consuming thing as in a 3D, I've got to do this job. This is my way of being in honouring who I am and devoting to my soul's path. And now that I have deep understanding of my humanness, and that's why the foundations of self that I've created for me, it's a blueprint of how you can understand your humanness to step into your soul's path, to work deeply in that inner child work and clear it and reclaim yourself, and then to open to the energetics and the soul self and your gifts. It's been such an honor. And I think finally getting everything on paper, all the things that I've said I wanted to do, getting my courses online, and it's been hours and hours of sitting at the computer, and it's not what I love doing. I'm not going to lie. And business is not my thing. I'm very good at business, but I'm good at relationships. I'm not good at business. So the running of the business is not my thing. Building relationships and doing what I do, my thing. So it's been very humbling. It's been very uncomfortable. And chasing myself is chasing myself to the depths of this path that I'm stepping into to follow. And it's uncomfortably awesome. And watching myself die and rebirth over and over again as these identities that have been keeping me safe, small, limited, peeling back and surrendering in love. Chasing myself has been the best decision that I've ever made. And the funny thing is, my life doesn't have a clear reflection of the depth of what I have navigated. So it's very interesting for someone to look for external validation. There is no external validation at the moment, and people can go, oh yeah, I can see what you've done. But the presence that I can hold, what I watch in my clients, people feel the difference. And in the end, when it comes back to what my little girl desired from a little girl, from the moment she got here, really was the truth. And to have a safe space to express that and to still be loved on the other side. And nothing really scares me when it comes to human nature. We're all of it, really. And having deep acceptance of my own darkness. And that doesn't mean perfect, and it's not polished. And there's always room for growth in relating. But in relating to myself and understanding myself to the depth that I do and honoring that, this year has been one of the greatest achievements. And I've still got 2 months to go that I feel like the little goals, I used to create goals that I'd let myself down in all the time. And it was something I was speaking to with Matt yesterday, my business coach, and he said, it's got to be relentless. You've got to choose you more than anyone's going to choose yourself. And that's in every moment. And I've done that emotionally, and I've done that on every other layer of myself except through this business part, through my finances. This is my greatest teaching in this lifetime. And that's the freedom piece for me. So it's not only been through achieving, I feel, emotional freedom and having this deep understanding of my humanness to use my gifts and follow my soul's path, to be able to really serve in a place that I'm out of survival completely. That also comes hand in hand with changing how I've set my 3D life up, my day-to-day life. And I can see why I've done it. And now it's the next level of being seen. It's the next level of rising. It's the next level of stepping up and knowing the wisdom of my path and how ready I am to support others on a greater scale to embody that. We've got enough knowledge on this planet. We've got enough information that's coming to us constantly. And without knowing who we are in separation to that deeply on an emotional level, not through protection, but through safety, so you can feel through and everything that comes towards you and have your own unique clarity on it, that's empowerment. That's embodiment. That's how you live authentically. And that, to me, if I can impart any of that, I know the ripple effect that not only has on the person that I'm with, but through their family. And what permission that gives everybody that comes into their energy. And that is really something I recognize through this year, is in chasing myself, not chasing life anymore. And I really wanted to share that with you today. I know it went on a few little tangents, but it's been a ride. And I know a lot of people have questioned where I've gone and who I am, and that's okay. I don't need people to understand me, but my love never wavers, and my commitment to the truth never changes. And the acceptance I have for the depth of understanding people, I love where I'm at in my life. And physically, I have probably been someone that hasn't given myself accolades for the things that I've achieved, because I'm always on to the next thing. But I was really reflecting this morning of so many things that I promised myself this year that I haven't broken promises with. And I think the devotion, if anything, in chasing myself is that I've shown up for myself like the person that I needed my whole entire life. And that actually brings tears to me, because that commitment is more than money can give me. That I've become the person that I needed over and over and over again. And that to me is the greatest gift I could have given myself this year, in choosing to chase myself instead of chasing life. So I hope you enjoyed my little Mels musing and reflections, and I will see you in episode 3.